dawn over the high, sun-baked mesas outside San Miguel Pueblo, New Mexico territory. You feel the grit before you see it. Wind that tastes like crushed shale, the metallic tang of spent gunpowder hanging low in the chill of morning. Men shift in the saddle, leather creaking, sabers clinking against stirrups. Captain Elias H. Monroe sits a little straighter than the rest, boots planted in those new brown gauntlets, his frock coat still stiff with starch. He thumbs the brim of his forage cap and watches the Pueblo with the clinical calm of a man assigned a job he believes he understands. Behind him, Lieutenant Samuel Riggs fumbles with a roll of rawhide, the ladders they've brought, long and slender, each lashed crosswise with thin rope. The ladders smell of tar and rope and fresh-cut pine. They look fragile against the adobe ramparts, like garden trellises leaned against a wall. The cavalry line, 2 companies of troopers from the 3rd U.S. Cavalry, 58 carbines and sabers between them, has come in from the west. Their horses' flanks steam in the thin air. Cartridge boxes glint like flat coins. Corporal Thomas Kearney checks the lock on his Springfield carbine, running a thumb along the brass sight. He is 30, scarred at the jaw from a skirmish last season, and he expects the morning to unfold in a familiar way. Scale the walls, drive the defenders out, take prisoners, burn a stock of arms. In the maps they carry back to fort, Pueblo walls are rendered as soft earthen shapes, adobe. They have been briefed on adobe as if it were a synonym for weak, crumble, sweep, occupy. But the Pueblo ahead is older than the ink on any map. It rises not as a single mound, but as a compact of terraces, stepped houses built with sun-baked clay, yes, but reinforced with stone cores and timber beams that reach into the heart of the mesa. The walls are painted in quiet reds and umbers. Along the parapets, figures move like dark knots against the sky. It is not a town of brittle mud. It is a fortress that understands weight and time. Inside the Pueblo, the defenders are already awake. Children hush each other beneath woven blankets. Women carry jars of water and sweat over small fires. On the parapet, a handful of warriors move with deliberate calm, crude bows strung, arrows stacked like black teeth. They have seen cavalry before. They know to hold their breath and to let the horses tire. A small, wiry war leader, his hair bound with leather, watches the cavalry with the patience of someone who sleeps atop generations of memory. He does not shout. He does not rush. He nods, and other hands slide along cords and wooden pegs. The Pueblo's ladders, heavy, broad, not the neat pine trellises the cavalry imagines, are already in place inside the compound, angled to catch and hurl. Monroe dismounts with the air of command. "Riggs, 4 ladders," he orders, voice dry as jerky. "Kearney, you and Martinez take point. Get those men up and over before noon." There is a swagger in the order. The word Pueblo has a history in Army reports that reduces it to a noun meaning place to be cleared. They have practiced assault drills against stockades and palisades, and the training has a rhythm that fits their boots like a ready-made gait. They advance, ladders unrolled and lashed. Men go to the wall with the confidence of the taught, the ladders snug against the clay parapet. You watch as Corporal Kearney plants the base of a ladder, leans back to test the angle, then starts the climb. His right hand finds the rung, his left braces against the top. Behind him, Private Martinez follows, a cartridge pouch bumping his thigh. The first 3 rungs hold. The 4th creaks. Above, shadows stir. A stone slithers from a hand and arcs with a peculiar, practiced trajectory. It thuds into the ladder where Carney's boot sits. The rung snaps, a clean, brutal fracture, and Carney's body lurches. His carbine goes with him, clattering like a dropped thought. He catches at the air and finds only more ladder, a jagged edge that spits splinters into his palms. He doesn't fall clear to the dust, but his knee gives and the whole ladder pitches. Martinez stumbles and slides down the remaining rungs, scraping skin from his forearms. A cry rises, not the high terror of panic, but the rough, immediate language of men who know to curse the thing that broke under them. Monroe looks up as if he can disbelieve the physics of it. He steps forward, grips another ladder, and pushes it against the wall. Up he goes a few rungs, then another stone finds its mark. Not a wild throw, but an economy of force, aimed to snap, aimed to unmake the enemy's instrument. This one buckles like a reed. Wood cracks, rope pops, a cascade of pebbles and a cloud of dust answer. From behind the parapet, arrows whisper past their ears, the sinew-made music of war that finds flesh and cloth. The troopers realize in a single terrible heartbeat that they have misread more than material. They have misread intent. The Pueblo warriors are not simply defending homes. They have turned every adobe ledge into a throat from which force can be expelled. Their hands are quick with stone, their boys trained to hurl from the safety of height. The ladders, for all their careful construction, were made for other kinds of walls, for straightforward frames, and not for 1,000 precise impacts raining from above. Smoke from a small incendiary, a thrown bundle of pitch and cloth, curls up, setting a thatch on the lowest terrace. The cavalry form a loose ring, carbines up, faces pinched. Lieutenant Riggs' jaw tightens. "Withdraw," he says, but his voice is swallowed by the rising clatter. The men move back, not in rout, but in a slow, stubborn recalculation. There are bruises, dust-caked faces, the metallic ache of splinters, and the new, urgent knowledge that the Pueblo will not be taken by ladders alone. The air tastes of lime and smoke now. Horses shuffle backward, ears pinned, their nostrils flaring with each thud of stone against wood. Captain Monroe drags himself from the remnants of the shattered ladder, palm bleeding from a splinter driven deep. He wipes it on his trousers and glares at the wall as if he could stare a hole through it. "Form volley lines," he snaps. The command ripples through the troopers like a spur to muscle memory. Carbines are unshouldered, hammers thumbed back. Boots scrape against hardpan as two ranks align, one kneeling, one standing behind. 58 rifles point skyward towards the parapets. "Fire!" The volley erupts, a crackling chorus of Springfield .50 caliber rounds tearing into clay and stone. Chunks of adobe burst like overripe fruit. Dust cloaks the air in pale clouds. A warrior tumbles from the parapet, struck clean through, his body thudding against the terrace rough below. Another jerks sideways, clutching his shoulder. But the wall does not break. The Pueblos were not built to scatter beneath gunfire. The bullets thud into timber and stone cores, embedding like teeth in bone. The defenders withdraw just out of sight, silhouettes slipping from parapet to rooftop, then reappear at flanking corners. From there, they answer. Not with muskets, but with gravity. Stones, shaped, smoothed, stacked into caches long before this day, rain in bursts. Some no larger than fists, some as broad as shields. They thud into shoulders, crack against knuckles wrapped around triggers, clang against helmet plates. One strikes Private Lawson in the cheek, breaking teeth and sending him reeling. Another lands between Riggs' boots, exploding into sharp fragments. "Reload!" Monroe shouts. But this isn't volley warfare anymore. The rhythm is wrong. The cover is wrong. The angles are wrong. A shrill whistle sounds from atop the Pueblo. It is not English. It is not command in the cavalry sense. It is timing. 10 Pueblo warriors rise along the parapet with bowstrings drawn taut. They do not arc their shots. They drive them like nails. Arrows plunge into coats and shoulders with the thump of mallet into wet wood. Leather offers little protection. 2 troopers drop with shafts protruding at obscene angles. One man, young, barely whiskered, clutches an arrow lodged in his thigh, screaming through clenched teeth. Carney grabs him by the collar and drags him backward through swirling dust. "Fall back!"
They give ground the way frost gives under a boot, reluctantly cracking in sheets. Carbines still firing, horses wheeling, hands still raised in defiance, even as the realization spreads like a fever. This was no misguided raid on a mud village. This was an assault on a people who had turned architecture into artillery. Monroe backs toward a cluster of boulders that offer partial cover. His chest heaves. He looks at the ladders, 3 of them shattered, 1 warped from an impact that bent its frame like a child's toy. "We'll bring up the howitzer," Riggs mutters, voice hoarse. Monroe shakes his head. No line of sight. Their terraces shield the base. Riggs wipes blood from his lip. "Then what do we do?" The captain looks at the walls again. Every terrace, every jut of stone, every shadowed window now appears not as structure, but as intent. These people didn't just build their homes, they weaponized them. "We get higher ground," Monroe finally says. "We climb the mesa." Riggs blinks. "You mean flank them?" "No. We rain hell from above, same as they did." For a moment, silence. Then, understanding. Orders ripple. Troopers remount. Carbines slung. They veer away from the Pueblo toward a narrow ravine that snakes up the side of the mesa. It is steep, treacherous, but it offers height. And height, now, is survival. Behind them, the Pueblo warriors watch their retreat, not chasing, not celebrating too soon. They know men who slink away with teeth still bared are not yet defeated. They know the real battle is about to begin. The ravine is little more than a scar in the rock, a slanted crack choked with loose shale and dry brush, the kind of path goats would think twice about. Yet Monroe drives his men into it without hesitation, jaw clenched, blood drying on his palm like varnish. The horses balk at first. Hooves slip on the incline, iron shoes scraping sparks. Troopers dismount, leading their mounts by the reins, shoulders straining against gravity. Dust kicks up with every step, coating their tongues in grit. The slope steepens, the air thins, and carbine stocks begin to feel like beams of iron. "Keep moving," Kearney barks, his voice echoing off sunburnt stone. Riggs stumbles, catching himself on a jagged outcrop. He looks back. Below, the Pueblo sits squat and defiant, its tears gleaming under the noon sun. From above, it almost looks peaceful, like stacked pottery, a lie in miniature. No arrows fly, no stones fall, yet every man feels watched, because they are. High above, 2 Pueblo scouts lie prone on a spire of red rock, faces streaked with ash to blend with shadow. One cradles a long Spanish pattern escopeta, a relic from older wars, its flintlock pitted but reliable. The other carries no firearm, only a sling and a pouch of polished stones. They do not fire, they observe. "Third Company," the older whispers in Tiwa, "climbing the red path." The younger nods. "Let them. The mesa will finish what we do not." Back on the slope, the first casualty falls. Private Hanson, 21, Minnesotan,
whose letters home spoke only of card games and sunsets, loses his footing. His boot skids. His hand reaches for a root that snaps clean. He tumbles backward with a wild, strangled shout. His horse rears, jerking free of its lead, hooves thrashing. Hansen rolls, limbs twisting at impossible angles, until he slams against a boulder below, motionless. Kearney swears under his breath. No time to retrieve the body, no time to bury. The slope demands forward or death. By the time they crest the ridge, shirts cling to their backs with sweat, lungs rasping. The sun hangs overhead like a hammerhead, flattening every shadow. They spread out across the mesa top, a wide, flat expanse of scrub and sun-baked earth. To the south, the Pueblo lies below, its roofs now level with their eyes. To the north, the mesa stretches into emptiness, dotted with sage and twisted juniper. Set firing positions, Monroe orders. We'll flush them from above. Carbines are unshouldered. Bedrolls become shooting mats. Men settle into prone positions, sighting down iron barrels toward the terraces. Monroe raises his arm, ready to give the command to fire. Then he freezes. On the rooftops of the Pueblo below, women and children have emerged. Not running, not fleeing. Standing, watching. Dozens of them, some with jars still in hand, others shielding their eyes from the sun. A young boy rests his chin on the wall, unafraid. A grandmother leans on her cane, her face unreadable. The troopers hesitate. There is no clear target, no visible warriors, only eyes. Monroe's hand hangs in the air, suspended between war and restraint. Riggs whispers, voice cracking. "Orders, sir?" The captain's throat tightens. The rifles around him lie ready, iron primed to spit lead. But every instinct drilled into him, every rule of engagement, recoils at the thought of firing into civilians. His hesitation lasts 3 seconds. A whistle shrieks from somewhere unseen. Warriors rise from behind chimney stacks, ladders, and shadowed vents. Not on the Pueblo below, but on the mesa behind them. The cavalry has been flanked.
They materialized like silhouettes torn from the rock itself. Pueblo fighters cresting the ridge behind the cavalry line, silent until the moment they strike. No thunderous charge, no battle cry, just a single rolling wave of motion. Slings whirring, bows drawing, war clubs rising. The first stone hits Private Cullen in the back of the skull with a sound like a melon splitting. He drops without so much as a gasp. Another stone smashes into Riggs's shoulder, spinning him sideways. By the time he turns, the air is already crackling with arrows, each loosed at the same precise height, neck level. "Turn! About face!" Monroe roars, but formation is impossible. The mesa top is open, exposed, and the cavalry has nowhere to brace shields or plant bayonets. Men scramble upright, carbines swinging wildly toward their ambushers. A few shots crack out, hasty, misaimed, bullets fizzing into the dust. A warrior with ash-smeared cheeks ducks behind a juniper stump, then rises to fling a stone with surgical calm. It slams into a trooper's cheekbone, exploding blood and teeth. Another warrior, this one with a Spanish saber slung across his back, darts between rocks, springing forward to disarm a rifleman with a single strike to the wrist. Kearney fires point blank at a charging fighter. The shot catches him in the ribs, but the warrior doesn't fall. He slams into Kearney like a battering ram, knocking them both into the dirt. The Pueblo man grabs Kearney's collar with blood-slicked fingers, eyes blazing, not with hatred, but with certainty. "Go home," the warrior growls in broken English. Then a stone smashes into Kearney's temple from another angle.
Friendly fire? No. A boy, no older than 12, had joined the skirmish. He holds another stone in hand, staring down at Kearney with the same steady conviction as the elder beside him. This is not chaos. This is lineage in motion. Monroe staggers backward, saber drawn now. The pistol at his hip is empty, spent in the first volley. A thin cut bleeds across his brow where a sling stone grazed him. He wheels to find Riggs on one knee, clutching his shoulder. They were waiting, Riggs hisses. They wanted us up here. Monroe's voice is low, bitter. Of course they did. We tried to take their roofs, they took the sky. The captain raises his saber, throat raw. Retreat down the west slope, move! But the west slope is farther than it seems, 200 yards of open mesa between them and escape. The Pueblo warriors don't chase in a rush. They advance in a tightening crescent, pushing the cavalry toward the cliffs like cattle into chute walls. Covering fire, Kearney roars, somehow conscious again, blood matting his hair. Carbines spit lead. Warriors duck and scatter, but they remain relentless, popping up again from new angles, firing from behind mesquite stumps, boulders, even the carcass of a toppled cactus. Monroe grabs Riggs under the arm and heaves him upright. We fall back now, or none of us leave. One by one, bleeding, limping, half out of ammunition, the troopers begin a miserable withdrawal. Not a rout, not while Monroe still breathes, but the grim backward crawl of men who have lost more than ground. They've lost the illusion of superiority. Behind them, the Pueblo fighters do not cheer. They do not howl in victory. They simply stop at the ridge's edge and watch. As if to say, you may run, you may heal, you may come again, but you will never again mistake these walls for mud. By dusk, the cavalry has retreated far enough that the Pueblo is a bruise against the horizon, still standing, still watchful. The men make camp in a dry wash scattered with mesquite and brittle grass. No fire, no songs. Even the horses seem to lower their heads in shame. Bandages are torn from shirt sleeves. Canteens pass down the line in silence. 23 wounded, 4 dead, 2 missing, presumed to have fallen from the mesa. Riggs sits propped against a rock, his arm tightly bound in a sling. His face is pale, waxy beneath the dirt. He stares at the sky as if trying to understand how it betrayed him. Monroe squats beside him, sharpening his saber with slow, deliberate strokes. Not because it needs sharpening, because it gives his hands purpose. They weren't defending a village, they were defending generations, Riggs mutters at last. Monroe says nothing. He watches the horizon where the last ember of sun sinks behind the mesas. Kearney sits nearby, knuckles split, temple bandaged. He's been quiet for hours. Now he speaks. I've fought Comanche. I've chased Apache. You hit 'em hard enough, they move. These folks, he shakes his head, they don't move. They're stone in human form. Monroe finally sheathes his saber. They didn't build walls to hide behind. They built them to fight from. A murmur of agreement rustles through the camp. Men who once spat the word Adobe like an insult now speak it like an element. Stone, iron, Adobe. Not weak, not soft. Engineered. Crafted with memory and purpose. From the darkness behind them, a lone sound rises. A drum. Slow, rhythmic, carried on the wind from the Pueblo. Not a war beat, a heartbeat, a reminder. Every man feels it in his spine, not as a threat, but as a warning. You are not the only ones who record history. Riggs closes his eyes. What's our report going to say? Monroe doesn't hesitate. We faced superior fortifications. Assault impractical. Kearney snorts. That all? Monroe's jaw hardens. We'll recommend parley, trade routes, diplomatic counsel. Since when do you turn diplomat? Since I realized ladders don't conquer mountains, Monroe replies. Silence. Then, quietly, from somewhere in the line, a trooper whispers, "Captain's right." Another nods. The drum fades into night. Coyotes pick up a distant howl. The wind cools, smelling faintly of juniper and clay. The men lay down on their bedrolls, but sleep doesn't come easy. They don't dream of glory or vengeance. They dream of ladders snapping like twigs beneath their weight. They dream of stone raining from the sky. And above all, they dream of walls that were never walls at all. They were warnings. Morning comes not with trumpets or reveille, but with the kind of stillness that follows a storm. The sun crawls over the ridgeline, warm but not yet punishing. Troopers rise stiffly from their blankets, faces drawn in hollow contemplation. No one reaches for a rifle first. Instead, they stretch, rub aching shoulders, check the wrappings on their wounds. Monroe walks the perimeter of the camp, boots crunching over pebbles. Each step feels heavier than the last, not from injury, but from understanding. He pauses atop a low rise, where he can see the Pueblo miles away, bathed in gold. Smoke from morning fires curls upward like fingers drawing sigils in the air. He raises a spyglass. Through its lens, he sees life. Children chasing each other across rooftops, women grinding maize, elders seated in circles, warriors perched at the parapets, not tense, not hostile, watching. Monroe lowers the spyglass and exhales slowly. Riggs approaches, left arm still bound. Orders? We ride back to Fort Selden, Monroe says. And the report? Monroe glances once more at the distant Pueblo. His voice is steady. We note that their walls are not to be taken by force. Not with ladders, not with rifles, not with cannon, unless we need to turn the entire mesa to rubble. Riggs studies him. You think command will listen? Command doesn't have to, Monroe replies. The land will make them. Kearney joins them, canteen dangling at his hip. He spits dust. So that's it? We leave? Monroe meets his gaze. We come back different. Kearney considers that, then nods once. Good. By noon, they are mounted and riding single file through the Red Canyon. No songs, no boasting. Only the soft rhythm of hooves and the ever-present hum of wind across stone. Behind them, the Pueblo shrinks into the horizon, not defeated, not even challenged, but acknowledged, respected. For years afterward, cavalry manuals will rewrite their footnotes. Field reports will swap phrases like mud walls for layered adobe masonry reinforced with stone. Fortification sketches will include notations about parapet storage pits for sling stones, terrace angles ideal for downward bombardment, and structural designs optimized for vertical defense. Somewhere in the margins of one such report, in faded graphite, will be scribbled 5 quiet words. Never underestimate the height. Because strength isn't always in steel. Sometimes it's in sun-baked clay. Sometimes it's in the hands that shaped it. Sometimes it's in the memory of a people who have watched empires rise and dissolve like sand. And when ladders snap and arrows fall, and stone speaks louder than cannon, even the cavalry learns to listen.